Here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
What's up, Supernatural superfans? I'm Chrissy Lenz.
And I'm Nate McWhorter.
And we're the host of
Gang That Drink,
a supernatural drinking game podcast.
It's the podcast where we make up drinking game rules for a favorite episode of our favorite show, Supernatural.
We recap the episode for you and let you know how all of the rules played out.
Then we let you know the drinking game rules for the next episode, so you can play along.
Plus, members get every episode early and ad-free.
With some extra bonus content chit-chat at the end of each episode as a member exclusive.
So download Gank That Drink, a supernatural drinking game podcast wherever the finest podcasts are available.
And or become a member at truestory.fm/gankthatdrink.
And when you're out there in the world saving people and hunting things...
You know, the family business.
Keep the Gank That Drink motto in mind. Be excellent to each other and party on.
Party on, dudes.
Ever wonder where the devil got his horns?
How about those cloven hooves?
Or that pitchfork?
Wasn't he an angel?
No, he was a snake.
No, he's the great red dragon.
No, he's the beast.
He's the prince of this world.
Prince of darkness.
Well, he's the prince of darkness.
Good morning, star lovelies. One of my names is Lester Ryan Clark.
And I sometimes go by Keenan Diaz.
And we're the hosts of the brand new podcast, The Devil's Details. What comes to mind when I say Lucifer?
How about Satan?
What about just the devil? How did the big bad of the Western world end up with so many faces? Join us as we dig up, decipher, and deconstruct the devil's many forms throughout history.
Take a guided tour with Dante through the 9 circles of hell.
Or revisit Satan's angsty bad boy years in Paradise Lost.
Learn the ins and outs of a Faustian contract.
Easier than a 1099, but with a hell of a lot more fine print.
Slither on over to The Devil's Details on True Story FM and join us in the diabolic discussion.
Love and hisses. Mwah! Didn't Al Pacino play him in a movie?
Are you sure that wasn't Robert De
I could
Niro?
have sworn it was Tim Curry.
That was Elizabeth Hurley.
Didn't he go down to Georgia at some point?
I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the next reel. When the movie ends,
Our conversation begins.
the way of the dragon is over. Big dragon whips its tail.
Hello.
Hi,
Hey,
it's Bruce Lee Day.
Bruce Lee. Finally getting added to our library of films that we've talked about. We have not had any Bruce Lee, which is crazy.
It is crazy. Of course, it's crazy. And this movie came out in 1972. That was an auspicious year because that year birthed both that movie and me. And so I feel a certain kinship with Bruce Lee because of that and all the other similarities that we have.
Well, and it's not long after that he sadly dies also, 1973. So just a little bit afterward. So
That was the year you were born.
that's one year I was born. Yeah.
I like mine better.
I like to think that actually I have Bruce Lee's spirit
Do you?
has been reincarnated.
Okay. Sort of, you're the crow.
I'm sure if I actually trained in martial arts,
Yeah.
I would blow people away.
Oh,
I'm
I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. Yeah. What is your sense of Bruce Lee? I mean, we spent the last 20 minutes of the member pre-show talking about kung fu movies, and
Yes.
you have a much broader experience with kung fu movies than I do at this point, and you are incredibly well researched, brilliant, handsome, have great taste in hats. What is your sense of where Bruce Lee fits in the overall narrative of kung fu movies? How important is Bruce Lee?
Oh, I mean, he's definitely a big part of the breakthrough in Hollywood that these Hong Kong films and the martial arts films had in really kind of exploding onto the scene. I don't think without Bruce Lee's part in all of that, I mean, he had been in a lot of films leading up to, by the time he's finally gets his leading role in The Big Boss just the year before this. I mean, he really only was the lead in just a small number of films. The Big Boss, Fist of Fury, The Way of the Dragon, and Fist of Unicorn, while he was alive, and then Enter the Dragon. They did some things posthumously, pulling bits and pieces of the Green Hornet to make a movie. Same thing with Fury of the Dragon. Game of Death was a film that he only shot little bit of, and then they kind of figured out a way to fake the rest of it. And then Circle of Iron and Game of Death 2. So there were a lot of little things that pulled like stock footage or little bits, but really he wasn't a lead in a lot of things. But the stuff that he did was so successful at the box office, it just kind of exploded, and it really helped this birth of this passion for kung fu movies and martial arts movies to the point where everybody was kung fu fighting, right? I mean, that was really the whole impetus of even that song getting written was because kung fu
was everybody fast as lightning too.
Because kung fu was just so popular because of all of this stuff. And so that's, I think, the thing that you don't necessarily think about, but these films, this action type of film, these martial arts were so exciting for people to watch. It was different, and it just kind of exploded, and Bruce Lee really played a big part in that.
My experience with Bruce Lee movies is when I was a kid, right? I mean, really, like I've seen The Way of the Dragon, but it's been so long that I no longer really remembered what was happening in it. But partially because it's I guess you could say, so important that it has been lampooned a lot, right? Like the Bruce Lee in general has become such a legend. He's now, funny. This is one of those movies where I can see how important he is as a person to the industry of this kind of filmmaking. And also, I'm a Jackie Chan guy. Like, I see what Bruce Lee did and what Jackie Chan became, likely as a response to what Bruce Lee was doing. I did not find this movie funny. I found this movie trying to be funny. So I didn't have a connection to it, and I didn't understand some of the subtleties of what I think he was going for in the humor. And it made me feel like a lot of the time I should have been laughing and I couldn't.
I definitely found it funny. It could be because in our pre-show chat, like, you've seen more Jackie Chan films when it comes to kung fu, and I've seen just kind of like a wider swath of kung fu films. And I guess I just recognize a lot of this humor is just in a lot of the films. I mean, some of them are taken more seriously, but a lot of them have this level of comedy in them that's just kind of this goofy comedy that they really amp up and play with. It can be pretty silly, but there's something about it that I just find endearing, and I enjoy what they do. And so I had a lot of fun with this one. I was laughing out loud at some of the choices that Lee made in the script, in the comedy, just kind of in the style. So I enjoyed this one a lot, and I had a lot of fun watching it. I mean, I can see why people might not click with it, but I found it to be very funny.
I'm going to give you an example, and it's because I'm spoiled. I read your Letterboxd review, and you pointed out this scene in particular, which I wanted to bring up, because my question to you was going to be, why is the white lady at the beginning so racist? So they're standing in the airport, and he's standing there kind of nonchalant. He's just trying to, he's waiting to be picked up at the airport, but other people are getting picked up around him. And there's this older white lady who is really Karening all over him, right? Like, she's just staring at him. And I thought, this woman hates this guy. Is it because he's Chinese? Is this a race movie? Did I miss that? And you point out in your review that it's because his stomach was growling, which I totally missed. I completely missed that. And I thought, I'm not going to understand the humor of this movie. Bruce Lee's making goofy faces. He's doing all this stuff. And I did not get the humor. And I thought this was a social commentary.
Oh, yeah. No, it's because his stomach is growling so much, which you can definitely hear. And it's worth going back and listening to it because she's staring at him because his stomach keeps growling. So
I think I'm going deaf at certain frequencies. I swear to you, I did not hear it.
Yeah. No, it's a weird sound. Like, it's not what you immediately think of as stomach growling. In fact, for the first few times I heard it, I'm like, what am I hearing? Is this some airport noise or is this something in my house? Like, to the point where I paused the movie and I was listening. I'm like, is that something happening here? And then I played it again. I'm
Okay.
like, oh no, it's the movie. Okay. And then I realized what it was when he sees the kid with the ice cream cone and stops and tries to accost him to get him to give him, like, put the ice cream in my face.
Is that what he was doing? It seemed like he was trying to eat the child.
No, he wanted the ice cream cone. And so that whole, and I'm like, okay, his stomach is growling. That's what all that sound was that I was hearing. So yeah, it's not like the greatest sound design where it was super clear and easy to understand, but I figured it out once I kind of saw the kid and everything, and then he goes into the restaurant and everything, and I was like, okay, I know what he's doing. He's playing with this whole thing about being hungry, and then of course that transitions to this whole thing about like having to constantly go to the bathroom every time he was somewhere. Like it was,
Yeah.
it starts off with these things that he just kind of is playing with, and I don't know, for me, it set up the humor for me in a way where I was like, okay, this is going to be one of the goofy sorts of kung fu movies. So I know what to expect now that I'm in this.
Yeah, I think I found my way into the movie for sure, especially because we watch these movies for the action and then the comedy, right? Like I'm in it because I want to see Bruce Lee do what Bruce Lee does, and they kind of slow roll that. Like we get lots of little scenes of him flexing and like punching the air and doing cool things, but we don't get to see him fight for a while. In fact, the first time we get to see him kind of fight, they set up to spar with the wait staff of this restaurant in the back alley, and then don't because customers show up. So it's like it's a great like dangling the carrot and then yanking it away. Like I thought that was perfect. I thought that
they know
was really
what we're
perfect.
here for.
Yeah, they know what we're here for, and they're going to make me earn it by sitting through the next scene of comedy. That stuff works really, really well.
So some of the comedy worked for you, the way that they were playing with it.
Yeah, I didn't get a lot of the like the situational comedy. I feel like I didn't get as much of the character comedy, right? The Bruce Lee stuff, I couldn't figure out how to lock into what made him funny to me. But the situational stuff, the restaurant stuff, there's a scene where he comes in, he and his lady friend come in to their apartment, and there is a thug with a gun, and Bruce Lee says, "Is this guy serious?" And that is what I laughed out loud. Like I thought that was funny because he so effortlessly disarms the guy at a distance and hits him with his own gun, and it's just a great little sequence of action, and that worked.
Yeah, and I think that's what he does well, is play with these sort of characters who do find this sort of work so effortless in the actual kung fu and the martial arts. Like it's easy for him. And so when we do get those moments where he just quickly disarms someone with one of his little homemade darts and then a few hits, it's like it's kind of cool to watch because he's just so fast and furious when he's doing his thing. You know, it's exciting to watch. I wonder if part of your problem, like, have you seen any of his other films, like The Big Boss or Fist of Fury, or you saw Enter the Dragon, you said?
Yeah, and Fist of Fury, and it's so long ago they all kind of blend together. Like there were sequences when I was watching this movie that I expected and didn't get, and I'm sure they're from other movies of Bruce Lee. Likely Fist of Fury. I think I remember that one more coherently.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that there's a level where you're seeing this sort of, like, he plays Bruce Lee. Like, he's not walking into these movies where he's, like, playing some interesting character or something. Like, it's pretty much him, you know, and that's what he's doing. He's really here to show off his skills. And so they're not writing, like, these complex characters. And so
that's also why I'm here, right? Like, that's why it's an understood engagement between us and the movie.
Yeah. You know, and I guess part of his humor is, or part of his character is the humor and just the way that he ends up portraying the characters in his films, and just kind of like the effortless way he walks into situations and takes people out and whatever it is that he has to do. And it's just kind of all part of the fun of what we get to watch with him. You know, I guess I'm curious, and maybe it's an unfair question to ask you, since it doesn't sound like you've seen any of his other films anytime recently, but I would be curious how they would play for you now, knowing that it's essentially kind of a similar character, but it's under someone else's direction. And I'd be curious, knowing that, I mean, this is Bruce Lee's one and only opportunity to be behind the camera directing. He also wrote the script, stars in it, and he plays percussion in the music. And of course, the fight choreography along with Unicorn Chan.
Right. Unicorn Chan. I wrote that down when the extended opening credits went by. Those were extraordinary works of paper mache.
Well, and also of, like, I love when they have their credits and they actually give you information about who the person is, like explaining that, when we have Chuck Norris in here, that he's, and I wish I wrote it down, but like 7-time American Kung Fu champion or whatever it was, it's just like, it's cool to see that they actually list that stuff. So, when we actually get to the fights, that they're really putting some stuff into play, which is cool.
Right.
But anyway, going back to my point, though, this was his only opportunity to direct. He directs this one film and then he stars in a few others. And then, of course, he sadly dies mid-1973. And I don't know. I guess I'm curious. I guess I saw Fist of Fury when I was watching all my Kung Fu movies. So I watched that one somewhat recently, but I would also be curious just for myself. I don't know if I can say it was recent enough to actually do a fair comparison of him as an actor in a film that he's just, he's starring in versus one that he also directed.
Yeah, I'd be very curious about that. My sense is, like you said, like your opening argument is they know what their kind of movie they're writing and they know what kind of movie they're delivering. And I'm there for Bruce Lee if I'm there for any reason at all. And so my sense is that they're probably pretty similar, right? That directors are coming in directing Bruce Lee movies. And this is a Bruce Lee movie. Maybe it's peak Bruce Lee because of he was directing it, but I have to imagine they're fairly similar tonally.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I feel like they still have that sort of humor and their stories are fairly simple. I mean, that's another thing. Like this period of these Kung Fu movies coming out of Shaw Brothers or Golden Harvest, they were cranking these things out. Bruce Lee himself was in 2 movies in 1972. I mean, you were talking about Jackie Chan in the pre-show. He was in like 12 movies one of these years. So it's like there was a big market for these Kung Fu movies, and they were pushing them out, and crowds are eating them up. And so I think part of it is also the directors were there just to make sure things got done effectively and efficiently so that they could move on to the next one. I mean, this film, one of those early shots, it's when Bruce sees that kid eating the ice cream cone. The foreground, just past the kid, where Bruce Lee stops before he turns around, is what's in focus. But the rest of the shot is out of focus. Like there's no rack focus or anything. Like he's out of focus as through that whole thing. And I'm like, okay, this would be a shot where if they probably weren't pushing production to move very fast, they probably, and also shooting on low budget. It wasn't a very big budget project. It probably would have had time to make these things look better,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. You're absolutely right. I noticed those sequences that just felt like, okay, we're a freight train. We can't stop. Just move it.
But some of that also, I just feel like it has to be because he's a first time director and just was making those decisions, saying that's okay.
Yeah. The overall story is pretty, straightforward, as you mentioned. It's, he comes to town. He's the Hong Kong savior in Rome. And there's a restaurant. There's a lot of food in martial art movies, I think, in these Kung Fu movies. So you notice
restaurants, I think, feature heavily, yes.
Heavily across these movies. And this one is no different. There are some thugs that want to buy up the restaurant. A mob boss wants to buy up the restaurant. And he's got thugs that come to, make sure that their customers don't go into the restaurant anymore. And so the only way it seems like the restaurant owner can figure out, like, what are we going to do to stop these guys? I think we need to make sure that all of our wait staff are trained in karate.
Right.
I don't know how that would play today.
I think more people need to integrate that into their stories. Like I would love to see Burn with Bradley Cooper, but also not only are they cooking, but they also have to train for martial arts fighting with Riley customers.
Can you Imagine the montage sequence. I mean, the hot pan and knife training sequence would be extraordinary.
Well, think of Ratatouille with that, like with the rat on your head training you.
Oh my God, it would be amazing. Andy, why are these movies not written? We need to bring these back.
We definitely do.
You imagine Favreau and Chef? I mean, it's such a good-natured movie, but also he's a straight-up murderer.
Yeah.
Oh, can't wait. Anyway.
Protecting the people on the streets of Florida. That's right.
Across the entire southern
country.
United States.
Yeah, right.
He is Kung Fu. He's just a nomad in a food truck crossing the nation and solving problems. So he comes in because apparently the karate isn't enough. And so an uncle calls another uncle who recommends and sends Bruce Lee. There's a lot of calls and recommendations.
Well, and she wasn't expecting him. She was expecting her uncle.
Yeah.
So clearly her uncle was somebody who could have done something. But yeah, he was not the guy. He's like, no, you go. You go instead.
Yeah, which is perfect because she was expecting like legal support and she sends a kung fu specialist. You could tell that this movie really wanted to go down the legal road and do things legitimately, but it couldn't. It just didn't know how. Ultimately, it had to send Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
Not attorney. Maybe Bruce Lee's an attorney.
Yeah, hey, we don't know. That's right. He could very much be a fighting attorney. That's a good point. No, what I like, well, maybe he realizes like this isn't my jurisdiction. I can't actually operate here legally.
Check your local jurisdiction. And so he has to fight.
I have to fight instead.
International law is complicated. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
We know better than many that check your local jurisdiction.
This is why Tang Lung, attorney at law, has to pull out the kung fu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyhow, and so he, by way of ego and testosterone, ends up demonstrating his kung fu, his Chinese boxing, and does it very, very well. And all of the guys, the wait staff, in a move of solidarity, rip off their karate gis and go shirtless. And thus begins the movie's parade of shirtlessness. That is comedy. Like every time we get into a big fight, somebody's going to lose a shirt. And I love it. I think it was hysterical. It's all
comedy. Part of it. Yep. Absolutely.
All part of it. Imagine Hong Kong. I mean, just imagine Rome littered with the ripped shirts of Chinese waiters everywhere.
Well, at least we know at the end that the Tang Lung will pick his own clothing up.
Yep.
And he will cover his victims up with their ripped up clothing.
That's right. That's a good point.
Yeah,
that's right. Honor. That's a man of honor.
That's honor. Yep.
Yeah.
One thing that we didn't really mention is that, we talked about that relationship with Chen, the woman who owns this restaurant, with her uncle. And what I enjoy about that is it sets up this sense of her being incredibly disappointed that her uncle sent this guy who doesn't even live in the city. Like they paint him, he's like, oh, I don't live in the city. I live out in the country. Like they paint him like, I don't know, he's supposed to be like a country bumpkin hick sort of guy. Yeah, which is great. And I love that they paint him that way. And that, again, to your point, we don't get to see him fight for a long time. And so she's just like, what use is this guy? Like she's so fed up with him. By the time that we have the first fantastically dressed group of thugs that enters the restaurant, oh my God, those 70s outfits were just prime. Oh, they were just so funny. By the time they finally enter, the staff takes them on first. And so he's not doing anything. He's just watching. And she's just like, oh, this is just stupid. And that's where they say, oh, let's go into the back. And then, of course, that's when we finally get to see him do some fighting and see how effective he is. And that's where we're like, oh, okay, this guy's okay. He's pretty cool. And that's where she's like, oh, you can, stay at my place. And like, it was, they play that well. I thought they had a lot of fun with how they set that up. Again, to your point of just allowing that to drag on as long as they do. Because
it's the ultimate Bruce Lee thirst trap, right? Like he's wooing her in this really nonchalant way. And ultimately, she has to see him shirtless and fighting in the alley before she recognizes that just how thirsty she is, and then she invites him to stay at her place.
No, it's great. It's very fun.
This is Nora Meow, and she's a regular. Had you seen a lot of her stuff too? Like, she's in, Big Boss and Fist of Fury, and
yeah, I saw her in those other films, but I don't think I've seen her in anything else.
Yeah, I haven't seen her in anything else. A lot of Chinese movies that didn't make it, and just a lot of stuff I haven't seen.
No, yeah, but I like her a lot here, and I think she clearly with the 3 films she did with Bruce Lee just ends up working well. She's a smaller part in Big Boss. She's just selling drinks, but I think in Fist of Fury and this, a little bit bigger. It's nothing grandiose. The part's not. It's not a complex part.
It's sort of the straight man part, right? Like,
yeah,
it's the foil to Bruce Lee doing stuff.
The non-fighter straight man, right? And I guess that's in a martial arts film, the straight man is the one who doesn't do martial arts, who ends up needing the help.
That's right. Ergo, restaurant owner. You could just say that. That's shorthand.
And her uncle is, I don't know, from the beginning, I wrote in my notes, I'm like, well, he's either an idiot or he's clearly also a bad guy. And of course, we get to find out exactly what's going on with her uncle later in the film. And I'm like, well, that is no surprise.
Did you get that bit? Like, did you see that coming?
Yeah, well, I didn't know specifically what he was going to do, but I had pegged earlier on in the film, I'm like, this guy's just shady.
Crooked.
Like, because he was so... And it's just how it's written. And, this is, again, maybe going to either the speed these things are put together or Bruce Lee's writing, but it's just like, it was pretty apparent that every time he was talking, he was saying, oh, you're going to get us into bigger trouble. You just need to settle down. We can make a deal. We can work something out and it's going to be okay. Just back off. That was essentially his part of the film. Every time they would do something, he's just like, you're just making it worse for us. Stop. It's like, this guy's no good.
Yeah, I feel like that was telegraphed, but that he straight up stabbed his own dudes was a surprise to me. I did not think they were writing that kind of character.
Right. No, I guess you're right. I wasn't expecting him to actually just completely stab them in the back, literally.
That was not a chef's knife either. That was like Rambo knife. And he just carries that, I guess. That's his thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty sad. But we've got the villains now. We should talk about them. We've got the thugs. There are a number of thugs. There's the little not so great written homosexual assistant character for the villain who they played it with a lot of stereotypes. And it was like, all right, it's 1972. I guess this is what we're getting out of this. And then the big villain is the one who is like this, he basically wants this restaurant because it's on his territory. They're not going to pay up. And so he's trying to take it from them. But it's like, weak sauce as far as like logic and reasoning behind all of this. And then, of course, we get this point where his assistant is just like, you need to bring in the big guns. There's these 2 people, this Japanese and American, who are both karate experts. We'll have to keep them from fighting because they both are going to think they're the best, but you got to bring them because they're awesome. And then, of course, you got to call in Colt. He's the big gun, really. And so they bring these 3 guns in. So that's the setup for the villains. How does it play? We've got all the thugs, we've got the gay assistant, we've got the leader, and then we've got these 3 bigs that they bring in.
Yeah, gay assistant is funny in 1972 context, and I was kind of finished with that humor pretty early. That's it. I didn't really care for. What was that, Uncle Wang?
I think Uncle Wang is her actual uncle, right?
Oh, that was her actual. Who was he? Was it?
Yeah, it's Ho.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I didn't really care for that. I thought it was interesting, the Chuck Norris thing, because of, I just know Chuck Norris much better than I know In Shi Kwang. It was such a standout guest appearance as the American thug that I didn't find myself paying a whole lot of attention to the other the other boss. I don't know that we necessarily needed him. We might have had too many bosses, and bringing in just one, and the connection between Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris, I think, is fascinating. That Bruce Lee was Chuck Norris's teacher and sparring partner, and that's an interesting connection to bring him into this movie as his big final nemesis. And the fight was good. The fighting was always good in this movie. Like, it just felt powerful and strong. And so all of those pieces put together, I think, worked well for me.
The villains, I thought they did a good job of ramping it up. First we get the kind of buffoon thugs in their ridiculously 70s clothing. That was just so perfect. I could not believe, like, when they all show up and they're like in those really tacky yellow shirts.
Oh, all of it in the restaurant and in the alley behind the restaurant.
Yeah.
That's the beginning of the ramp.
Right. They were just so fun. One of them is just kind of this heavy set guy who's just like, this guy clearly isn't here for martial arts.
Yeah, he's definitely here for the rigatoni, and also now he has a gun.
Right, exactly. It was fun to watch, like, them fighting with those, and then we ramp that up because then we got the nunchucks that he gets to fight with, Bruce Lee, when one of the villains, one of those thugs, ends up with nunchucks. And so we get some great nunchuck fighting there, which is a lot of fun, especially when the thugs are kind of the idiot bad guys, which is fun to watch because the one picks up the nunchucks and he's going to figure out how to use it, and he swings it and hits himself in the head, which was just perfect. It's like exactly what I wanted out of this sort of thing. And then we get the actual fights with the other people. And so it was fun to watch when we get to the two karate experts, the Japanese guy and Tom. Was that the guy's name? I can't remember what the Americans, I think it was Tom, the two Japanese or the two karate experts. And we get to watch them first fighting each other because they both won't agree on who's better, which was really funny to see that they were just like, this is how ridiculous that they are because they have to fight as soon as they are in the same room with each other. But like watching those fights was fun. And then watching like when Bruce Lee was taking the karate experts on, leading to that big fight with Colt in the Coliseum of all places, which was, I love that this big boss is powerful enough that, he can't get this restaurant, but hey, if you need to rent the Coliseum and clear it out for a fight.
Yeah. That was so good.
It was fantastic.
The fight before the Coliseum, though, that's the fight that started to feel a little bit superfluous. That's we're going to fight the Japanese guys. And I couldn't help but think that maybe a location got borked because they end up in the Coliseum and the restaurant was staged. But the middle fight felt like somebody at some point said, screw it, let's do it right here. Right? They're just at the kind of the base of a road ditch kind of a place.
It's like the construction start of a project, right?
Yeah.
Like there are some dirt piles. They've cleared the forest in an area. They're getting ready for something, but right now it feels like they're just at like what's going to become a gravel pit.
Yes. And it just felt like they were like, something went wrong, but we're going to do our best because we've got to film a movie. And that's the one that felt like out of sorts to me a little bit. And it was just a lot of guys running between wide open distances that was not interesting visually. It was not an interesting thing based off of what we had already seen. And so I was excited to get to the big final Chuck Norris fight again and just move it along, people.
By having the fight there, though, does it make the Coliseum look that much better?
I think the Coliseum always looks better. The Coliseum doesn't need a ditch in a construction site. The Coliseum already had a back alley behind a Chinese restaurant in Rome to make itself look great. The Coliseum was already primping and doing its hair to be ready for the final fight. It didn't need a stop along the way for probably some sort of a blend or a rosé.
They should have had a stop. I like having the stop along the way, but I agree. Like it felt like a cheap location. Like it would have been nice to see them do it in some more interesting space. And I don't know if they couldn't get it or they were just, like you said, they lost a location or like, well, hell, let's just use this.
Screw it. We'll do it in the parking lot. That's what it felt like.
Right. It doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
The fighting was fun, though, and I did like the fighting, and that, I think, sells it. And even if you have to watch them basically fighting in a big dirt parking lot, it plays well action wise. And that was, if there was something that also happens to be very close to the Colosseum, right? I was like,
yes, which is the Colosseum is like, I don't know. I've never been to Rome, but isn't the Colosseum like downtown?
That's what I thought. I was like,
it sort of feels like there were scenes where they were driving around it and it's just a very busy road. And then suddenly we're in the middle of a dirt parking lot.
Yeah. In the forest, right?
In the forest.
Well, maybe it's very much a rewrite of the city, like Bullet or something. It was like, this isn't the real Rome. This is our movie version of Rome. But
yes,
it's fine.
It's fine. Yeah,
it's totally fine. I do like that with the fight with the two karate experts. It was nice to see how good they were. Like, you could see them fighting, but at the same time, you initially put them up against all of the wait staff that, unfortunately, like, I was kind of hoping that was something, and I know the story wouldn't have made sense because it only takes place over a couple days. It's not like we have months of time to train, but it would have been nice to see in that fight that the wait staff had gotten to a point where they could fight a little better than they did. And instead, it's just like they're fighting no better than they have the entire time. And so they're just basically punching bags to watch these karate experts go to town. And we don't actually get any good fighting between any of the restaurant employees and anyone they're fighting. And that was something it's great. It's always great seeing Bruce Lee fight, but I was hoping that we'd still get to see some of them start getting better.
Yeah. I agree with that. And my hypothesis is one of the things that Bruce Lee has as sort of his signature is one guy fighting a lot of guys at the same time, right? There are a number of those sequences where Bruce Lee alone is fighting a lot of guys. There's a scene like that in the restaurant where the thugs take out all of the servers and then it's left to Bruce Lee to throw darts and beat up all the guys. There is the scene in the ditch, and there's the scene at, it's just a lot of that. And I think it's because that's one of the things that Bruce Lee knows that people want. They need him to be the savior. And as much as I wanted it to be more cooperative too, I wanted to see Bruce Lee as like the famed educator of Jeet Kune Do. I wanted to see him take the staff and make them powerful. And that never happens. Of course, the movie takes place over like 3 days.
Yeah, that's the issue. Yeah.
So right. How good can they get?
Right. And I guess that's part of the issue. But it was one of those things where I was like, because they're not good fights either.
No.
We just watch the karate experts just kick everyone's butts. It's like, okay, well, that was fine.
And the problem is we don't get a sense of how good those guys are because we know how bad the servers are.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And we get a better sense once Bruce Lee gets in there. But even him, he pretty much takes them out right away. They're not that hard for him to fight against. I think he gets a couple hits. Like he takes a couple blows from them, but largely it's a pretty easy fight for him too. So again, as experts, we just aren't getting a sense of that. Like, it's not enough of a build for me. Like, I liked the fights. I just wanted them to be a little more complex and rigorous. So by the time we got to Colt, we had a sense that, okay, there were all the thugs at one level. Those quote experts were at a higher level, and then Colt is at the highest level. And I feel like we've got the thugs and those experts kind of all operating on the same level. And that's, I would have liked to see a little more. And maybe I'm also not a martial arts expert, so I can't tell, but that was a good block against that particular kick. Like, I can't watch it that way. So maybe that's part of my problem.
Oh, I don't know. I think you're fine. I think you're pretty close.
You think so?
Yeah. I think you've seen enough movies.
Well, I'd love to be able to watch and go, ooh, the monkey kick. Oh, now he's using the crane.
That's what I pull out of Ralph Macchio, too. Oh, crane stance.
Yeah, right.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I'm with you. I stand by, I think it was your point originally that people knew what they wanted in Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee knew what they wanted to see out of him. Right. And it was Bruce Lee cleans up everyone.
Right. And when we finally get to the big fight at the end against Chuck Norris, which I got to say has a fantastic setup. One, it's the Coliseum, but two, he walks in and you get this ridiculous shot of him on the opposite side of the Coliseum, standing way up high in a window, Like,
Yes.
and you've got the assistant's voice echoing through, like, you're gonna die, and all this sort of stuff. And then this just like this crash zoom in on him from like across the Coliseum all the way into him up there in the window. It was just like, okay, this is awesome. This is gonna be fun. And then it's just like cat and mouse as he's stalking him around the Coliseum before we finally get to the fight, which, you know, is a great build for all of that.
All I wanted to hear in that sequence is C-3PO yelling, "Over here!"
Right?
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. And then it gets to a fantastic fight. And I loved how Lee shot this, allowing for the camera shots to be wider so that we could actually see them really fighting. It was longer takes. So you're actually really seeing fight as opposed to cut, which, I mean, you get some of that, but largely it's cut really well. I will say the funniest thing about the whole fight is the strange buildup to the number of kittens that are wandering around the halls of the Coliseum. And we keep hearing them meow. He sees them wandering and everything. And then we cut to this close-up of this kitten that meows, but it's Bruce Lee's, oh, you know, like his little cry, dubbed over the kitten as they then get into their fighting. I was on the floor laughing. Oh my God, that's so funny.
I did also note that, and I think I had heard that there was that Rome was like a cat thing. I went to Santorini in Greece. It's a like a dog thing. There are dogs everywhere. The cats. So I looked up, is Rome, what do we know about Rome as a cat city? And the stats are interesting. It's like it says here there are over 300,000 cats in Rome. Of these, 180,000 live in private homes, and 120,000 live as stray cats in cat colonies. A cat colony is a registered legal entity in Rome with specific rules. A cat colony can be registered when there is a population of at least 2 cats habitually living in a specific area that they elected as their home.
Wild.
What do you think of that?
Wasn't there a documentary that came out like in the last 10 years about like the cats in Rome or something?
There is, but I didn't remember that if it was in Rome. I watched that documentary and I could not tell you where it was because the cats were amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So interesting.
So distracted. Yeah. I think maybe Turkey. I think maybe it was a Turkey.
Yeah. I can't remember, but I do remember that there are these populations of cats that people have living around. So
it is Istanbul. Sorry.
Istanbul. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but I love how it plays because, I mean, we even get to a point where he does the little crash in and out zooms on Chuck Norris's face. And then he does the crash in and out zoom on the kitten, and then he does the crash in and out zoom on himself. Like
that's comedy.
It was so over the top, just goofy that it made this fight, which is serious. Like we got some serious fighting action going on here, but it took it to this level that allowed it to still be fun. And it's a great fight. And this is the fight where we finally get to see, like, Chuck Norris delivers some serious blows quickly and efficiently that kind of takes it out of Tang for a minute. Like just watching him like with his hits and kicks. I mean, it was pretty cool to watch the way that played through before he finally gets his energy back and finds his center and is able to actually take him out. But it made for an exhilarating fight. I had a great time watching this fight.
Me too. This was extremely gratifying, especially seeing younger, unmustachioed Chuck Norris.
Very hairy.
Yeah, very hairy. That was actually an interesting note. Big guy, strong physique, lots of hair all over. Didn't take care of the hair. I'm so used to him taking care of the hair everywhere that surprised me.
And I thought that was interesting because it became a form of attack on Tang's part when he grabs him by his chest hair.
Yeah. Maybe
rips it out and then blows it out of his hand. I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting to see this as part of the fight.
That was the first power move. Nobody knows that, but that was the first one. It would have been something different had he reached back and grabbed Chuck by his back hair, which was also present.
Yes.
That was crazy aesthetic, 1970s aesthetic choice. We've come a long way in 52 years. So, yeah, the fight was awesome. I had a blast watching that final fight, and I got I got all the humor. Like, it felt like the camera humor, the directorial humor, that played well for me in the back half of this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. The fight itself was considered by many to be one of the greatest movie fights filmed. It's been listed on a lot of different lists and publications. And I guess in this fight, Bruce Lee demonstrates a kick that he popularized, or became popular because of this, called the oblique kick, that is now used quite frequently, but wasn't around until you kind of saw him using it here.
The oblique kick. What is the oblique kick? Can you do it right now? I mean, for those on video.
I don't know if I can, but you're kicking obliquely? Does that answer your question?
Just kicking in a way that only the most educated would even be able to know it's happening. We're doing great.
The oblique kick is a push kick. It's aimed just above the opponent's knee, driving it backward with force. Although an oblique kick looks similar to a stomp kick, its downward drive is executed diagonally rather than vertically.
Wow.
Yeah, you're often hitting the opponent's lead leg or kneecap.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it can be controversial.
Yeah, the most controversial kick.
It's intended to damage the opponent's knee ligaments, which could lead to career-ending injuries. It's often used in MMA fights, and that's what it's kind of become known for. Some say that standing light on the lead foot can prevent the knee from hyperextending or jolting. In the UFC, oblique stomps are permitted as long as they land above the knee. So, yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Ouch.
The oblique kick. I'm watching John Jones do it in his fights.
He is one who actually has cited Bruce Lee as an inspiration. So,
yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. So don't do that, everybody. That hurts people.
No oblique kicks. Stop. Unless you are in the MMA. And even then,
I don't know that we're the rule-making body of podcasting, but I'd like to say here, I'm striking oblique kicks from the podcasting rules of engagement. No more.
There you go. So he gets Chuck Norris, and then that's kind of, it's kind of because then he has to come back, and that's when he finds out. I like the uncle, because the assistant comes running back and is talking to the uncle about how we're screwed. He just took out our guys, and now we're going to die. And the uncle recognizes what's happening, slices his arm open so that Tang, when he shows up, thinks that he's still one of the good guys. The mob boss arrives. He shoots the uncle and he shoots the gay guy, but the uncle was just about to stab Tang in the back, and that's when he gets shot. And then, of course, the police arrive, and that's kind of the end. It's like, oh, okay, well, I guess we had our big fight. We can just end this quickly. The bad guy gets arrested, and he gets to go home. And then it ends on this moment that I thought was kind of interesting, where you have one of the characters tell Chen this thing about how he was born to be a loner. He's like not meant to, like he's like essentially setting up the whole premise for like the kung fu type of character, right? Where it's like he will be wandering and fighting and saving people. That's his life.
Yeah, because Bruce Lee aspires to David Carradine. That's the whole point. He just wants to be a Carradine.
What have we learned? That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the end. He's walking away, and it's kind of like this kind of like sad ending. We get this look on her face, like realization, like what? And then we see him walking away. It's like, oh, I guess maybe was that like she had feelings for him and realizes, oh, I'll never get to realize those now. It was a strange little look, but
yeah. And yet I think it just reinforces, because he already beat Norris and puts the gi and thing on his knocked out head, and like it's just the themes of like respect and isolation that feels like that's kind of what Bruce Lee's going for. In the end is a very fast wrap up and kind of thematic punchline, and then we're off.
Were we meant to believe from that Chuck Norris, that Colt was dead, that he had actually killed him?
I don't think so.
The way he covered him up and the way that the look on his face was, I thought that he realized he had actually gone too far and that he'd actually killed the guy.
Maybe. Okay, maybe you're right, but he was reluctant to do so. Is that fair? Like he didn't want to because of all the respect that he had. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I just don't think he even realized that he had gone that far. Like I was not quite sure what was happening there, because it's almost like there's a moment where he's like, "Are you done? Can we stop?" Like a moment where he's like, do you call mercy? Do you call uncle? And Colt won't. And I guess that's why he attacks him and kills him there. But I don't know. I was just like, because his face was like, damn it, I feel horrible about this. I can't believe I've done this. Like he almost like, it's like fleeing a crime scene sort of moment that he has before he comes back with the thing. So
yeah, that's interesting. I think you're right. I think he's dead. I get it. Of course, it's the universal sign of I killed that guy, but I still respect him pulling his thing over his head. But I do think that it makes sense to have that moment of reflection and regret, because he hasn't killed anybody the entire movie. He doesn't kill anybody.
Right.
He does pierce a lot of them with his wooden darts. So much piercing.
Yeah. Which was, in a movie, in a period, and this is definitely something that like kung fu films are recent, whereas a lot of the wuxia films take place in like the historical past. A lot of the kung fu films, you have fist fighting against people who have guns. And it's like, how do you manage that? And I thought that was a great way to show that Bruce Lee had carved all of these darts specifically knowing he was up against guys with guns, because inevitably it was always to stop somebody who was throwing or trying to shoot at him with a gun. Mm-hmm. And I thought that worked well.
And he always hit them in their gun hand perfectly.
Yeah, right.
Every time.
Except for the big boss at the end. He never quite got the boss.
Right.
Yeah.
It was good. Overall, I'm glad we were here.
It was a fun movie, just, in the sense of like adding to the fun. I mean, we cinematography, we talked about kind of the camera work, all the crazy zooms and stuff. Tadashi Nishimoto is behind the camera, and Joseph Koo did the music. And the music, I think also they do a fun job. I mean, one, it feels very kind of that early 70s sort of score type, but it also has that comedy vibe. And I thought that was something that Lee worked well into this, is just blending the comedy through music, through the look of it. All of that, I think, worked well.
Yeah, it looked good. Sets were good. Hollow cardboard boxes falling on thugs' heads. Awesome.
Right. I know.
Exactly
I was
what
just
I
like, this is what you expect. You need a pile of these just big empty boxes that somebody can land in. Yep. Perfect. Yep.
Lots of boxes.
Good stuff.
It's all good.
All right. Well, we'll be right back. But first, our credits.
The next reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Luke Kelly, Annie Zhu, Yulei, Oriole Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. Hi, everybody. It's me, Pete, from just a few seconds ago. Look, I know you hear our voices on the podcast every week, and you think, man, Andy and Pete are just so unrelatable sitting up there in their podcast ivory tower. Well, I'm here to tell you nothing could be further from the truth. We put our logoed nerd merch on one arm at a time every morning, just like you. And also like you, we're fans of the late, great Bruce Lee, and we do our best to stand up for the honor of restaurant servers the world over in the form of street fights. You get me. You probably find yourself getting into impromptu street fights all the time. And what happens in those fights? You know it all too well. Your shirt gets ripped off, so you can showcase your ripped physique and your fighting prowess. But constantly buying new shirts is intellectually cumbersome. Stop wasting your valuable dragon energy on wardrobe and count on your friends at the Next Reel family of film podcast merch store. We've got a wide selection of high-quality, durable shirts that can withstand even the most intense of street fights. Whatever your dragon energy demands, we've got you covered. Our shirts feature awesome designs paying homage to our favorite films. And the best part, while these shirts will likely fall apart after you rip them from your torso for the flexing, you won't have to spend a single drop of your dragon energy thinking about where to get your replacement. Just like the legacy of Bruce himself, the Next Reel merch is timeless. So don't let your wardrobe suffer because your active street fighting lifestyle. Head over to thenextreel.com/merch and grab some new gear to keep you looking stylish while you're busting out those martial arts moves. The Next Reel family of film podcasts has your back and your torso. Check out thenextreel.com/merch today and upgrade your fighter fashion game. And thank you for supporting our podcasts. And remember, be like water, my friend. Back to the show. Sequels and remakes. It's Bruce Lee, right? Surely this has been remade 500 times.
It hasn't been remade, but they did make an exploitation sequel called Way of the Dragon 2. This was 1978, following his death, starring Bruce Lee, L.E. Lee, not L.E.E. Lee, and Bolo Yeung. This was definitely this period where there were a lot of kung fu films getting made with fake Bruce Lees. This was definitely more of an exploitation version of The Way of the Dragon than the original. And so to that end, it's like, okay, well, I guess it is what it is, you know?
I have to imagine in 1978, that was horrifying for the Lee family. Like, what a horrible thing to do, to start just exploiting the death of Bruce Lee. I would have been in a state.
It spurred an entire thing that literally was called Bruceploitation.
Yeah.
Like, there was Bruce Lee, L.I., making some films out there. There was Dragon Lee.
Did you ever see any of the Bruce Lee movies? BROOS?
Leigh?
Leigh, Bruce Lee.
I missed those ones.
You didn't see those? Weird.
No. But yeah, there was Bruce Lee, and Dragon Lee were the three main actors in these Bruceploitation movies. It was a whole thing that they released a lot of them. And some of them were like the Pig Boss instead of the Big Boss. They did
the Big Boss.
Right. They did a lot that actually just were spoofs on his name or his other films, like Bruce Lee, A Dragon Story. Goodbye, Bruce Lee, His Last Game of Death. Exit the Dragon, Enter the Tiger. Bruce Lee Fights Back from the Grave. New Fist of Fury. Bruce Lee, The Man, the Myth. The Dragon Lives Again, Fist of Fury 2, The Image of Bruce Lee, Fists of Bruce Lee, Enter the Game of Death, Fist of Fury 3, Kung Fu Fever, Fist of Fear, Touch of Death, The Clones of Bruce Lee, Bruce's Fist of Vengeance, Jackie and Bruce to the Rescue. Yeah, so there were a lot. There were a lot.
Oh my gosh. I can't wait to see the collected works of Jacob Bruce Lee.
And you know what ended Bruceploitation?
No.
You should appreciate this.
What?
Jackie Chan.
Okay.
Because he made such a name for himself on the success of his kung fu comedies, Snake and the Eagle's Shadow and Drunken Master, that it became like the new thing. And so they were able to kind of end all these Bruce Lee exploitation movies and just actually allow some other people like Jackie Chan to make their own movies.
Rightfully so. That's the right way to end it, right? That's capitalism, yo, right? That's exactly what was supposed to happen. Market demand.
Right, exactly.
I can't believe that's the lesson we get out of this. Well, okay. How to do at award season? Can you track any awards, or was it so long ago that awards didn't exist yet?
No, there were awards for this one. It had one win with one other nomination, and it did make it onto a list. At the Golden Horse Film Awards, It was nominated for Best Feature Film, but ended up in a tie runner-up with The 14 Amazons. Those two films lost to the film The Escape. I thought I'd read these synopses just so you had a sense of what they are. 14 Amazons. The Yang family, men and women, have served their country loyally for generations. During the war, General Yang is ambushed and killed. His widow and the entire family set out to avenge his death and defend the country. And The Escape, it only said, everyone seems to want to stop General Tsai from leaving Peking. It's like, okay.
Because he didn't pay the check?
Not sure. I guess that's The Escape, yeah.
Okay.
But it did win Best Film Editing. Last but not least, at Empire Magazine's list that they put together in 2010 of the 100 best films of world cinema, this made it as number 95.
And it surprised me to read that this was the movie they come up with after having a budget of $1 billion in today's dollars. Did I read that right?
Yeah, for Lee's solo directorial effort, he had a meager budget. It was only $130,000, which is $985,000 in today's dollars. This movie premiered December 30th, 1972 in Hong Kong, and it blew away everything at the box office. It became the highest grossing film ever in Hong Kong up to that point. Domestically in the U.S. and Canada, it had a wide release in 1974, and it topped the box office charts then. It became the 8th highest grossing film in France in 1974, the 13th highest in Germany, and the 9th highest grossing in Japan in 1975. All told, the movie went on to earn an estimated $130 million, earning back 1,000 times its budget, which certainly breaks the record of the movies we've covered on the show, more than doubling Mad Max's successes. This lands the film with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $9.8 million, 14th on our list, but still damn impressive.
The thing that I notice more than anything else, so you said it came out in Hong Kong and blew everything else away, and you talk about the U.S., and you talk about Canada and Japan and France and Germany. What about Italy? They did the movie shot in Rome.
Right.
They fought in the Colosseum. Do Italians have no respect for the Chinese martial arts happening on their turf? Is that what I'm hearing?
I wish I knew. I knew. Yeah. Did it even get to play in Italy, or was it banned because they misused the Colosseum? Yeah.
Desecration of historical artifacts.
Right.
What are you going to do?
Crazy.
Do you have anything else to say about it? Are you done?
Great film, loved it. One last little note: the title, "The Way of the Dragon," in Chinese, it actually translates to "Ferocious Dragon Crosses the River."
There were no rivers in this movie.
It was a pun because Bruce Lee's native name is Tang Lung, which translates to "little dragon," and "crossing the river" is an idiom, basically a Chinese idiom meaning leaving China. So, Little Dragon, so it's basically Bruce Lee Goes Abroad is kind of what you could basically say the title is.
So I wonder how that would have tested.
Right. No, but I had a great time. I really enjoyed watching this. It's just this style of film I just have a blast with. So it was very easy watch, and I'm glad to have it on the list.
Me too. It was a slow burn for me, but it's any of my disconnect from the character comedy of Bruce Lee is absolutely made up for by the awesome fight choreography and comedy, and the movie is awesome.
Yeah, it's a fun one. All right, well, we will be right back for our ratings, but first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, The Chiodo Brothers' Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
It was a night like any other night. Then something happened.
Did you see that?
Something different.
It's no shooting star.
Why here? Why now? Why clowns? They've been knocking him dead all over the universe.
What are you gonna do? Knock my block off?
Soon they'll be doing it at a theater near you.
Killer clowns from outer space.
Pizza?
Maybe they're just cruising through the galaxy and stopped here for a bite to eat.
You don't need a police pal, you need a psychiatrist. They want to play games? They're messing with the wrong guy.
What are you in for?
Killer clowns from outer space. It's crazy.
All right, picture this. You're strolling through the streets of Rome, just trying to enjoy a nice place of spaghetti when suddenly a gang of thugs jumps out of nowhere. They're all like, "Hey you, yeah, you with the pasta. We're gonna kick your ass." And you're like, "Mamma mia, not again." But then out of nowhere, Bruce Lee appears. He's all like, "Not on my watch, you goons." And then he proceeds to beat the living ravioli out of them with nothing but his bare hands and a well-timed hi-ya. Now I know what you're thinking. But Andy, I'm not Bruce Lee. I can't just go around karate chopping people on the streets of Rome. And to that I say, fair point. But hear me out. Maybe for you, it's not a gang of literal thugs. Maybe it's that coworker who always steals your lunch from the office fridge, leaving you with nothing but a sad, empty Tupperware container. Or maybe it's that person who always takes the last parking spot, leaving you to circle the block for hours like a hungry vulture. But just like Bruce Lee, you've got the power to stand up for yourself. You may not have his sick martial arts skills, but you've got something even better. A love of the movies and a membership to the Next Reel family of film podcasts. That's right, by joining our super secret, ultra exclusive club of film lovers, you'll gain access to a wealth of knowledge and inspiration that will help you tackle even the toughest of challenges. Need to stand up to that lunch thief? Channel your inner Dirty Harry and say, "Go ahead, make my day, punk." Need to assert your dominance in the parking lot? Take a page out of the Mad Max playbook and rev your engine menacingly. But wait, there's more. As a member of the Next Reel family of film podcasts, you'll also get to join in on our top secret discussions in our exclusive Discord channels. You'll get to debate the finer points of cinema with fellow film buffs, like whether The Godfather is really the greatest movie of all time, or if Showgirls is actually a misunderstood masterpiece. And if you're really lucky, you might even get to join us for our live recordings via YouTube. You'll get to see us in all of our unfiltered glory as we geek out over the latest releases and argue whether Vin Diesel is a better actor than Meryl Streep. Spoiler alert, he's not. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to truestory.fm/join and sign up today. For just $5 a month or $55 a year, you can become an official member of the Next Reel family of film podcasts, proud members of the True Story FM network, and a force to be reckoned with in the world of cinema. And who knows, maybe someday you'll be the one strutting down the streets of Rome, ready to take on whatever challenges come your way. With the power of the movies and your trusty podcast membership by your side, there's nothing you can't handle. Except maybe a gang of ninja assassins, but hey, that's what sequels are for, right?
Letterboxd, Andy, letterboxd.com/thenextreel. That's where you can find our HQ account over on Letterboxd, where we review and rate all the movies that we've talked about on the show. What are you going to do for your personal review here?
I just had so much fun with this one. It was laugh out loud funny. The action sequences were a blast. It was just the goofy charm just totally won me over. I'm going to say 4 stars and a heart.
I love that you call this a laugh out love movie because that's going to stick. Like, I know you didn't mean to say laugh out love, but I found it really charming and endearing. It was a laugh out love movie for me too. It's 4 stars and a heart because I laugh out love it.
Laugh out love this one all the way to the bank. Yeah. Great movie. Yep.
And speaking of merch, I'm going to put that on a shirt. Laugh out love your movies.
Well, hey, there you go. I love it. I laugh out love it.
I laugh out love it.
All right. Well, don't forget, you can find me at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete at Pete Wright. And you can find the show at The Next Reel over at Letterboxd. So what did you think about The Way of the Dragon? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Why don't you go first?
All right. I have Edgar Cochran's 4.5-star review. Bruce Lee fighting Chuck Norris in the Roman Coliseum 70s style is enough for me to declare this a potential manly celluloid device to cause the universe to implode out of epicness. Yes.
Well, it better be good then.
Epic implosion.
I follow that up with Branson Reese's Heart review. No stars, just a heart. I think it's beautifully tragic that Bruce Lee, one of the most charismatic and iconic screen presences of all time, left us with a single completed directorial outing, and that it features a 20-minute running gag of him needing to shit because he ate too much soup. I get the joke now. He's always looking for the bathroom.
Right. Like, he goes to the bathroom 3 times after he eats the soup.
Most movies, nobody goes to the bathroom at all. This movie 3 times. I didn't get it. Oh, God.
Well, I'm glad it works for you now.
God, it just like, oh man, that was a real hot kiss at the end of a wet fist moment, right? Like that hit me right in the right place. Thanks, Letterboxd.